So we are moving, things are changing, and we are very excited to actually hear from Sai, the awesome Sai, on how that movement, how we can make sort of benefit out of that movement, or the situation of feeling stuck and the times of transition. So Sai is a ray of sunshine and clearly a beautiful human being that I still haven't met. Well, I have met, but not spent time and made him my friend yet, which, you know, that's sort of what I do. But we've not, you know, because of COVID, I'm quite sad that we've not achieved that yet. But I've heard so much great stuff about him, and most of you, I'm sure you're also a fan of Heads About the Waves and all the stuff, you know, cool stuff that they do and they bring to our community. So it's super, super cool to have him here at a very particular time, actually, that I feel like we all need their hand and their resources and sort of their advice. So we're lucky to have you guys in Cardiff, and we are very excited to hear from Sai, right? So let's all give just hands or clicks and welcome Sai. And Sai, take it away.
Hello. Oh, that was the sweetest thing. Thank you so much.
Always. You need to take over.
Cool. All right.
Although I quite like your face, it could stay, but
yeah, I could just leave that up there. That's probably cool. Okay, can you see that okay? Are we seeing this all right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Hello, hi, it's me. I'm Sai. That's the name of the presentation, and that's my name down there as well. I can't actually see the chat box at the moment. I think I've turned that off somehow. So if you have got questions, just
I will, if you don't mind, I'll butt in Sai, and then we'll do it that way. Okay.
That's cool. Cool. Super duper quick like trigger warning before we get started. I'm going to be talking about mental health, and I'm going to be touching on the issue of self-harm as well. So I'm not going to be going into loads of depth on it, but just to give you guys a heads up on that. And I'm also, when the guys got in touch about the theme of transit, I decided to take that quite literally and kind of go all in on like hand up transitions in this presentation as well. So strap in for that. Okay. And transition number one. Before we get into it, I'll just super quickly explain who I am. Let's start at the very beginning. Here is me as a super cool child, pretty cool, obviously. I had a very normal childhood. I had a very nice childhood. You know, I grew up in America for a bit. That was really cool. But when I hit my teenage years, things started going a little bit wrong for me. And here is a visual representation of things going a little bit wrong as a teenager. I obviously became slightly less cool, ever so slightly. But basically, I went through a really rubbish time in high school that ultimately led to me feeling really angry and really frustrated. I was bullied super badly, and I was a bit of a loner. And particularly from being bullied, I was left with this feeling of like, people judging me and attacking me without getting to know me, and I just didn't understand why that would happen. It led me down quite a self-destructive path, and it got to a place where self-harm was quite a regular occurrence for me. It was just a really horrible negative cycle and a really rubbish time in general. But then I had been playing drums since I was 11, and there was one day where I had a particularly bad day at school, and I came home, and instead of taking it out on myself like I usually would, I took it out on my drum kit and just like thrashed this kit, and it felt great, and it had that same purpose that self-harm was serving to me, where it was dealing with all of that anger and frustration and letting me vent that and expressing all that hurt that I was carrying around with me as well. And drums slowly became my new coping mechanism. That became my go-to thing every time I was having a bad day. Sorry, neighbors. And then it became more than just a thing that I like had to practice. It became like a real like lifeline for me, was playing drums. And then from that, I ended up making friends and, you know, playing in bands and just generally having a better time of things, really. And it's taken me to this point now where I'm lucky enough to tour the world when the world is open for touring. And yeah, so basically something that became like a a necessary thing ended up becoming a really generally positive thing for me as well. So but the name of the band, I don't really want to go into it too much. You know, if you're in, I mean, oh no, I've lost the presentation. Oh no. Oh, it's, do you know what it is? It's trying to open the link. It is musicofjunior.com. I don't want to go on about it, but there it is. It's musicofjunior.com. The band is called Junior, which is really hard to find on Spotify as well. So apologies if you're trying to find it on Spotify. Just look at musicofjunior.com. Anyway, drums was great, and that's kind of where the story of Heads Above the Waves came from. I thought that everybody should play drums, and this was going to be the thing that was going to solve self-harm, and this was going to be the thing that was going to change the world. Everybody should just play the drums. But after getting together with some friends, my friend Hannah, who runs night in Cardiff called Team Up, and my friend Griff, who runs the production company called Storm and Shelter, we got together and started speaking to a bunch more people who'd gone through this experience and realized that drums wasn't going to be for everyone, which I suppose is kind of obvious when you think about it. But Heads Above the Waves became a place where we could share different people's experiences of the things that helped them, and then we can build up a database of all different things that can work for different people. And that's on this snazzy website, which we've still got now. It's hatw.co.uk. We share people's stories, and we share blog posts, and we share straight up advice on there. We also have merchandise on there. I spotted Clemmy were up in one of these as well. This is arguably the cutest and the lamest, possibly in equal measures, idea that you've ever had, where the print is on the inside of the sleeve, so someone reads, "I'm glad you exist," if you're about to give them a hug. Oh yeah.
Love that. It's the best idea. See, don't. It's the best idea.
Yes.
Don't play that.
So we also share coping techniques. So like I mentioned, drums was mine, but like it says on every piece of merch that we print, that one size doesn't fit all. You know, when it comes to mental health, there's not one size fits all solution. So we share a bunch of different ideas of things that could help. So art and collaging is one. You know, this was one of my favorite things that came out of those early conversations around that we had around it with people about what helps them. Ripping up bits of paper and then just, you know, bending it like that and then sticking it on a bit of paper and writing a positive message to yourself, you know. It's a really, really positive thing that we do in school workshops now as well. Video games, that's a coping technique that I love. It's one of the few times where I actually switch my brain off. I have real trouble with switching off, but when I'm losing myself in a game, that's a time where I can just unwind a bit. Making lists, you know, whether that's the good things or the bad things that have happened in your day. Maybe it's just having something to physically cross off as you go along so that you can actually see your progress and acknowledge that. Exercise, I mean, my wife's more into this than I am, but you know, endorphins are great, exercise is good, and I should do more of it. Wrapping yourself up in a duvet, sometimes you just want to be like warm and comfy and cozy, and this is possibly the most wholesome photo that I've ever seen in my life as well. And journaling as well, just getting stuff out of your brain and onto paper can help you just process it, you know, and deal with it a bit better. But what's important is you've got to find what works for you. And this is the key thing. One takeaway that I want you today is to think about what things you might already have in your life. So like for me, I was playing drums, but didn't realize that could be a helpful thing. But, you know, maybe we've got positive coping mechanisms in our lives already that can help us get through the tough patch, you know. So I really want to challenge you guys to think of the things that are going to help you get through the next difficult time that you face. And there's a bunch of ideas over on the website, which, as I mentioned, is hatw.co.uk. Okay, enough bragging. Let's get on to the theme of transit, and possibly my favorite transition of this entire presentation. So those of us who joined early on, I put together a playlist, and one thing that we've always loved in Heads is getting inspired by art and music and positive lyrics in songs and stuff, or just yeah, positive stuff in the world. So when I was reflecting on this theme of transit, I obviously went to, there is a band called Transit, and they've got a song called Nothing Lasts Forever, which, oh my gosh, just seemed super appropriate. So this is the next thing that I want to kind of think about with you guys, is this idea that nothing lasts forever. I used to work in Urban Outfitters. Of course I did. Look at me. There I am. I'm outside Urban Outfitters right there. This was actually, that was the day that I quit to go be a rock star as well. But when I worked in Urban, we would spend hours and hours, particularly at Christmas, folding piles of t-shirts and getting them looking nice. And it would literally take one person to come along and just ruin that entire pile. Like it would take them like 10 seconds, like, and it's all that work is undone. Maybe you've been there as well. Maybe it's been that you've spent months working on a project for a client, and then they turn around and change their mind about what the entire concept of what they even want is. I think on some level we can all relate to putting in a lot of work and it being undone quite quickly. But throughout this process of folding t-shirts, it reminded me of Buddhist monks who they spend ages making these beautiful mandalas by hand out of grains of sand. So like this picture is loads of individual grains of colored sand that they're like literally using chopsticks to move and put together into this beautiful piece of art. And when it's finally finished, they just sweep it away. They just get rid of it. It's a reminder that nothing lasts forever and nothing is permanent and everything is transitory. Is it a flippant comparison to make between folding t-shirts for hipsters and these beautiful works of art? Possibly. But is it a good reminder about everything being transitory? You betcha. So it leads me to this key point that the good times aren't going to last forever. So we've got to enjoy them. I know that can sound a little bit negative at first, you know, good times aren't going to last forever, but it's true. Nothing lasts forever. So try and soak up the enjoyment in every small thing that you can. Life is so short. You know, enjoy it. Spend time talking with the people that you care about, you know, even if it has to be over Zoom. Or my wife does this beautiful thing where she closes her eyes while she eats a piece of chocolate just to like really enjoy the taste of that thing. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things in the world, of just actually being there and enjoying that moment. So yeah, enjoy those good times while they last. But it also means that the bad times won't last forever as well. So even if you're feeling awful right now, that feeling isn't going to last forever, and you can get through it because you've got through 100% of your bad times before now, you know? And these bad times don't have to define you. You're more than your mental health. You're more than the things that happen to you, and you're more than the feelings that you feel. So yeah, those bad times, they're transitory too. Let's pause for a minute now then and share another posi quote, which is something that we love doing from Heads, maybe from the voice of our generation, Smash Mouth. This is a clever one, see, it's a thinker, because we could all use a little change. I mean, are they talking about like change, like cash? Or are they talking about like change in the world, you know? Truly the next Beatles. So changing the world, what a transition from Smash Mouth to changing the world. Obviously, COVID has had a huge impact on the world. It's something we were chatting about in our breakout group there as well, this idea that how lucky it is that this has happened now rather than 10 years ago, when we wouldn't have had the ability to communicate as well. So we're all transitioning to new normals. It's been a really interesting one to see how now, even months after the original national lockdown, we're still at a point where playing fields are getting leveled. I love the idea that there's people out there who are top scientists or lawyers, people who are really like at the top of their game, and they are still joining Zoom calls like this. There's been this transition where suddenly people who might be at like the bottom of the food chain in their career or in their workplace are suddenly the ones who are maybe having to tell the big boss dogs how to like unmute their mic or just operate a computer or something. You know, I feel like it's been a really interesting leveling of the playing field in some of these scenarios. Now, I mean, I might have mentioned it, but I am in a band called Junior. Whatever, you know, it's musicatjunior.com. I'm also in a band called Novo Amor as well. Coronavirus has meant that we've not been able to tour. No one in the music industry has been able to tour, and that's really wild to think that even, you know, the biggest names in the game haven't been able to do shows. Some of them, there's been some cool examples. I think it was Flaming Lips did a gig where everyone was in those big Zorb bubble things, so that was sick. But in general, touring hasn't been able to happen, which for the music industry is a huge blow. I mean, yeah, so it's a change that we've had to deal with. Sometimes in life, transitions, change are going to be forced upon you, and it can really, really suck, especially when it's out of your hands, like this situation is. But it has led to innovation in the music world. So artists are now doing live streams. It's obviously not the same as being at a gig in itself, but it does mean that you're able to put on a show as an artist, you're able to express yourself, and that's able to be available everywhere in the world. So like this Beaver Doobie one, which is fantastic, and I highly recommend you check out. You know, you can be in LA, New York, in the UK, like at the same time, which means you're able to reach more people with less of a carbon footprint as well, that inevitably comes along with flying a bunch of people around the world to play rock shows. And so speaking of carbon footprints, here is a change and a transition that has happened as a result of locking down in China. You know, the nitrogen dioxide levels from the start of the year, like you can see the huge difference as soon as lockdown came into effect. Here is another important looking graph that I found on a science website, which shows that the CO2 emissions around the world globally have dropped as well. Just speaking personally, I've ended up walking places where I would usually perhaps have driven. You know, I'm sure a bunch of other people are in that same situation where actually walking to the shops is a bit of enjoyment for me now, rather than having to, you know, drive and it be a purely functional thing. So there are some positive changes that can come as we transition to new ways of operating, since change has been forced upon us. I mean, but apparently the CO2 emissions are now hitting like even higher levels than they had before, which is possibly because everyone's like, get me out of my house. But it's almost as if everyone didn't watch that new David Attenborough documentary, which if you haven't watched, I highly recommend. One other good bit of news from the whole world shutting down was that penguins got to wander around in an aquarium. Don't necessarily have a good point related to transit around this, but I do love penguins, and they were in transit around the aquarium, so it's relevant. Here you go. Okay, so change happening in the world. So this has led to heads having to come up with changes as well, right? So I mentioned briefly earlier that we've been doing workshops in schools, introducing those coping techniques. So we share them online on our website, hatw.co.uk, but then we take them into schools and we actually let people try them out for themselves, right? So we've been doing these workshops for years, we've got all this knowledge that comes along with that, and we've got this bomb-ass website that I mentioned earlier, hatw.co.uk. So lockdown has meant that we have now started making digital versions of our school workshops, which I pretty much just wanted to try and shoehorn this GIF into this presentation at some point. So now this is obviously great for national lockdowns. It means that, you know, we can still be delivering our content into schools, but it also means that suddenly we can reach schools in Scotland or London or Australia, you know, and things that we can suddenly reach so many more people. This is something we could have done years ago. We just didn't. It took like a global pandemic for us to, and this change being forced upon us, for us to make one of the biggest leaps forward as a company that we have done in some years. So this also leads me on to the rise of the humble QR code. So we've been printing flyers since day one, where the idea is if you buy some of our merch with a message, which can help start conversations in itself, we'll send out some flyers and stuff as well with it, with advice and information for, you know, all sorts of different things related to mental health and self-harm in particular. I wrote off QR codes years ago. I thought that who uses QR codes, whatever. But it's rightly or wrongly, it's become part of our lives now, whether that's ordering food or, you know, I've just seen them everywhere. Suddenly QR codes are becoming a thing again. So we've now been able to put QR codes on the back of our flyers, which means that we're able to actually share a bunch more information. So rather than having to print, you know, 10 different flyers, we can have one with a QR code on the back, right? So here is one. Ta-da! There is a QR code that you can scan right now. In theory, if you just open the camera on your smartphone and you hover over that, it should, if I've done it correctly, link you to a page on the Heads website with all of our posts related to COVID-19. I just realized that what I should have done here is like, I should have just rickrolled it and had this link just to Rick Astley. That would have been fantastic. But no, instead you're going to get something useful out of it, right? There's a bunch of good content there. So have a scan of that. So yeah, so, you know, I think that's a really positive change that's kind of come out of, you know, noticing these new changes that are happening in the rest of the world as well. So yeah, good old QR codes. Okay, onto a challenge for you. So part of what we're all about with Heads is helping people transition from unhealthy coping mechanisms to healthy and positive ones. And that's the challenge that I want for you in this coming month. I want to change the way that your brain works. There is some debate about how long it takes for new habits to form and like changes to happen neurologically. And the argument is anywhere between 21 days and 254 days, which is quite a broad spectrum. But one thing that everyone agrees on is that there are a few things that are going to help make change and lasting change happen in your lives. So doing it for you, this is one of the most important things. Deciding to make change for yourself. I've spoken briefly today about changes that are out of our hands, but there are some changes and things that you do have control over. You know, make changes because you want to, not because some hipster on Zoom is telling you to do it one morning. The idea is going to stick so much better if it comes from you. Oh, it's like Inception, that great movie, where, you know, if the idea is coming from you, it's going to stick and it's going to last a lot better. So if you're going to be making a change, make sure that you're doing it for you. Remind yourself why. So kind of related, I suppose, but doing something consciously and mindfully makes so much more of an impact than just doing stuff because. For example, I mentioned that I love playing video games, but there's a difference between me just kind of being like, oh, there's nothing to do on a Sunday afternoon, I'm just going to sit and play COD for 5 hours. Versus when I notice that I'm getting into a negative headspace and notice that I need to switch my brain off for a while and just reset so that I can come back and attack a problem fresh. I'm doing the same action, I'm still playing video games, but I'm going into it with a different mindset, and therefore my reason why is different and the outcome is going to be different as well. I'm going to feel more relaxed and calm and ready to approach challenges because I've actively taken time to switch my mind off, versus I'm just mindlessly getting killed by 14-year-old German kids on Call of Duty. And finally, don't do it alone. So there's studies out there that show that going to the gym, for example, you're much more likely to stick with an exercise routine if you're exercising with someone else. Because as humans, we are quite social creatures, you know, and it's one of the challenges that lockdown has brought along with it is the fact of, you know, people feeling isolated. So, you know, as humans, we can motivate each other and inspire each other and encourage each other and hold each other accountable as well. So when we're trying to affect change, it's going to be more effective if we're doing it with a sense of community, you know. So when you're trying to affect change, don't do it alone. Try and do it with someone else if you can. Okay, on to the challenge and the Batman transition. My challenge to you is this: to upload something to your Instagram story that has made you happy for every day of November. Some of the lower estimates are that change can happen within 30 days, or 21 days, beg your pardon. So if we're doing it for the month of November, we're giving ourselves a good shot at letting change happen, you know? So it can literally be anything. Something that's made you smile you know, something that's just lifted your day a little bit. Even if that is just like this one lyric in this one song sucked a little bit less than everything else has today. If it's made you smile, then it's worth sharing to try and make other people smile as well. And the purpose of this, by the way, isn't to try and show off like, oh, look at how great my life is on Instagram. The point of this is about actively seeking out positive things around you and things that have had a positive impact on you, and putting positive stuff out into the world with the hope of inspiring others. And what I really love about this challenge, I did something similar that was called the 100 Happy Days. And if anyone's feeling super up for it, heck yeah, try and do 100 days rather than just November. But you literally, if you're doing this as a challenge and you're determined to get through this challenge, then you literally find yourself like actively looking for stuff in every day, being like, okay, I've got to find something positive that's happened today so that I can share it and keep this challenge going, right? Which literally ends up like retraining your brain to actively look for positive things. So by the end of November and by the end of 100 days, if you do that long, it's naturally going to come to you that you're going to be like, this has been good about today, even if everything else has sucked. So yeah, you know, even if you are having a crappy day, that's okay too. You can still find one teeny tiny thing that has been positive and that day wasn't an entire write-off. Basically, if it's something that's made you do this, fantastic use of video content and GIF content there. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I should send this around as like on a WhatsApp reaction kind of thing, you know, so everyone can use it in the future. But if it's made you do this, then we want to see it. We want you to share it with us. So please do tag us on Instagram. It is Heads Above the Waves. And please do tag Creative Mornings Cardiff on there as well so that we can all see it. I think what we're going to try and do is if you tag us on an Instagram story, then we'll create like a story highlight with it on the Heads page so that we've just got this nice database of good stuff that in the world that is happening right now. We've kind of loosely put this hashtag of PosiNov on there, Positive November, which I'm really hoping isn't going to transpire to be something like offensive in Russian or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so basically find something positive every day in November and share that with us. You can do it as an Instagram post as well, but if it's an Instagram story, then we can add it to our highlights. And at the end of the month, we will pick 2 people at random and someone will win these fabulous prizes. We've got this Too Rad to Stay Sad flag and a Brew Can Do It travel mug as well. Fantastic. If you do it all the way to the end of the month of November, then you'll be in the best shot of winning because you'll be like fresh in our minds every day and it'll be like, whoa, there's loads of entries from this person when we're picking it at random. So, you know, do it every day for November.
So Sai. Hello. Real quick, I think we are picking people who are doing it for the entire month, right? Or let's say the majority of the most entries basically. So if you do it every day, right?
Yeah, so basically,
every day.
Yeah, the challenge is to do it every day. So if you make it to the end of the month, then you will have done 30 days, half November? You will have done 30 posts. So yeah, so we'll be picking someone at the end of the month. I guess
could it be a story? So it could be everyone's story, or it could be their grid, so that it's up to them basically. If it's grid, they have proof. But I think I was just thinking as an Instagram person, so if they are doing it just only on stories, they can create their highlights so that when you pick them, you can sort of double check that they've done it. Do you know what I mean? So yes. Put it on your stories as a highlight if you're just a story person. If it's on your feed, we'll be able to see the proof there anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. And
yeah,
we'll pick someone at random at the end of November who has shared something positive every day in November to win some goodies. So just as a reminder then, with this challenge, make sure that you're doing it for you, because if you really want to change your mindset, it's going to happen a lot more easily. Don't feel obligated. Do it if you want to, and remind yourself why you're doing it. We're obviously incentivizing a bit with prizes and things, but ultimately, I want you to be doing it because you want to affect positive change in your world and in yourself, not just because there's free stuff at the end of it. And don't do it alone. You know, there's a bunch of people here on this call today. Let's all try and do it together. And yeah, just kind of, we're not in this alone. So let's not be alone in this challenge as well. Okay, one final reminder then. Yeah, trees lose their leaves every year and they still stand tall and wait for better days to come. So sometimes, you know, change is inevitable. Sometimes it's going to be within our control, and sometimes it's going to be out of our control as well. And, you know, if a tree can get through losing its leaves every single year, then you can, you flipping wonderful human being. So yeah, you've got through tough times in your life before now, and you will get through tough times in your life again. So hang on in there, you excellent humans. Yeah, there you go. That's the website again, just as a reminder, it's hatw.co.uk.